The girl had been blind since she was very young, but she had learned to see the world in ways others could not. She could hear the softest sounds, feel the tiniest movements, and sense the rhythm of life in ways that people with sight often missed. Her home was small, but it was filled with warmth and music. The piano in the corner was her favorite place, and she spent hours every day sitting at it, letting her fingers dance across the keys. When she first touched the piano, she did not know the notes or the names of the keys. She remembered the way the teacher would guide her hands and tell her stories about the music. She listened carefully to the sounds and learned to repeat them, not with her eyes, but with her memory and her ears. It was hard at first, and there were many mistakes, but she did not give up. Music became her world, a place where she could express everything that words could not hold. The people around her often did not understand her passion. Some thought she should focus on simpler tasks, or that she would never be able to play real music. At school, other children whispered behind her back, saying she would fail. They looked at her with pity or doubt, but she ignored them. She had learned early on that the opinions of others could not reach her heart when it was full of music. Her parents tried to protect her. They also encouraged her to follow her love for the piano. They knew it was not easy, and they worried about her future, but they also saw the determination in her eyes. They watched her practice every day, sometimes staying in the room just to listen. The sounds of her fingers moving across the keys were not only music, they were a story of courage and hope. She had a routine. Every morning, she would wake up early and run her fingers across the piano before breakfast. She liked the quiet hours when no one was around, when the only sounds were her own and the gentle creaking of the floorboards. She would practice scales, simple melodies, and sometimes she would close her eyes even more tightly and play pieces she had memorized. Each note felt alive, and she felt connected to something bigger than herself. Her teacher often told her that music was not just about playing the right notes. It was about feeling, expressing, and telling a story with every sound. The girl took these words to heart. She did not just play the piano. She listened to it, let it speak through her, and shared her emotions with it. This was something even the people who doubted her could not understand at first. At school, she faced challenges every day. The classrooms were designed for children who could see, and sometimes she felt lost among the papers, books, and drawings. But she never let it stop her. She used her hands to feel textures, her ears to pick up voices, and her mind to navigate the world. She became independent in ways that made her parents proud, and at the same time, her music grew stronger. Her friends, though few, were supportive. They would sit with her and listen as she played, or sometimes they would hum along to the melodies. They did not care about her blindness. They cared about the music that came from her soul. These friendships were important, as they reminded her that the world was not only full of doubt, but also of kindness and understanding. The neighbors often came by, curious about the girl who could not see but could make the piano sing. Some were skeptical, expecting mistakes or awkward performances. Others were quietly amazed when they heard her play. It was not just the skill. It was the depth of feeling in every note that caught people off guard. She could make a simple song sound like a story, full of characters, emotions, and dreams. Every evening, after finishing her practice, she would sit quietly by the window, listening to the sounds outside. The wind, the birds, the distant voices of people walking by, all of it became part of her music. She could imitate these sounds on the piano, creating melodies that reflected the life she could not see but could feel. Music was her way of painting pictures without colors, of telling stories without words. Her family sometimes worried that people would not understand her talent, or that she would face cruel judgments. They knew that the world could be harsh, especially to someone different. But the girl did not focus on fear. She focused on the piano, on learning, and on growing stronger each day. She believed that if she worked hard and stayed true to herself, her music would speak louder than any doubt or mockery. School events and small gatherings became opportunities for her to show her talent. The first few times she performed, the audience was silent, waiting to see if she would make mistakes. She felt their eyes on her, some full of doubt, some filled with curiosity. At first it made her nervous, but she learned to turn that nervous energy into focus. Her fingers would move more confidently, her music flowing naturally, as if the piano and she were one. The girl often thought about her dreams. She did not want fame or recognition. She wanted people to understand that blindness did not mean inability. She wanted to show that talent could shine even in darkness, and that determination could overcome fear. Every day, she told herself that she had a gift and that it was her responsibility to nurture it. Her neighbors slowly began to change their attitudes. When they heard her play, they stopped whispering and started listening. Even the children who once teased her began to admire her courage and talent. It was not something that happened overnight, but with every performance, she gained confidence and respect. People started to see her not as a blind girl, but as a pianist who could touch hearts with music. The girl also learned to face challenges with patience. There were times when her fingers would stumble, or a melody would sound wrong. Instead of giving up, she would start over, listening carefully and adjusting. She learned that mistakes were not failures. They were lessons, opportunities to improve and grow. This mindset became a core part of who she was, both as a musician and as a person. Her teacher noticed her unique approach to music. While other students relied on sight and memory, she relied on intuition and emotion. This made her music different, special, and unforgettable. The teacher often said that she had a gift that could not be taught, only nurtured. And she nurtured it every day with patience, love, and dedication, even in moments of doubt. When people questioned her abilities, she found strength in her music. She would close her eyes, let go of fear, and allow the piano to guide her. The sounds she created were not just notes. They were expressions of her heart, reflections of her journey, and proof of her courage. Through music, she communicated with the world in ways that words could never capture. The girl also loved to explore new melodies. She would experiment with different rhythms, harmonies, and styles. Sometimes she would create her own compositions, pieces that reflected her experiences, feelings, and dreams. These compositions were not just exercises, they were stories, poems, expressions of a life lived fully despite challenges. Her family continued to support her every step of the way. They attended every small recital, listened to her practice, and celebrated every accomplishment, no matter how small. Their encouragement gave her confidence and reassurance that she was not alone in her journey. Together, they created an environment where music could flourish and where talent was recognized and nurtured. The girl began to understand that music was not just a hobby, it was her purpose. It gave her strength, joy, and a sense of identity. She knew that one day she would face larger audiences, people who might not be kind or understanding. But she also knew that her music had the power to change minds, touch hearts, and break barriers. As the days passed, she became more confident, more skilled, and more determined. She was no longer just a blind girl learning to play the piano. She was a young musician with a voice that could speak to anyone willing to listen. And though she faced doubts and challenges, she never lost sight of her goal: to let her music be heard, to let her story be told, and to let the world understand that talent does not need sight to shine. As the girl grew older, her connection with the piano deepened, but so did the challenges around her. People's expectations did not always match her abilities, and she often faced skepticism and judgment. Some teachers and peers assumed that a blind girl could never truly master an instrument. They whispered behind her back, sometimes underestimating her intelligence, sometimes doubting her talent. She overheard these things, yet she refused to let them define her. She had learned early on that the only opinions that mattered were the ones she carried inside herself, and those were filled with music, passion, and determination. School events were both a chance to shine and a test of endurance. Every time she performed, some students would smirk or roll their eyes, expecting her to falter. Adults who came to watch were often polite but skeptical, unsure if the blind girl could keep up with the music. It hurt at first, the unfairness of it, but she had developed a quiet resilience. She had spent years practicing in solitude, and now she knew that her music was stronger than their doubts. Each performance became a small act of courage, a challenge to the expectations placed upon her. Her teacher was one of the few who fully believed in her potential. They would spend hours together, exploring pieces that stretched her skills and encouraged her creativity. The teacher often reminded her that music was more than hitting the right notes. It was about emotion, timing, and telling a story. The girl embraced this, pouring her feelings into every key she pressed. She learned to balance technical skill with expression, letting her heart guide her fingers as much as her memory did. Even with support, she faced moments of frustration. Some pieces seemed impossible to learn without seeing the sheet music, and she sometimes struggled to memorize long passages. Other students would glance at the piano, seeing her hesitation and assuming she would fail. But she did not give up. She would break down the music into smaller sections, feel the patterns with her hands, and replay them until the sounds became part of her. Each tiny success built her confidence and silenced a bit of the doubt that surrounded her. Her family was her anchor through these times. They encouraged her to keep practicing, celebrated her progress, and reminded her of the strength she carried inside. They never treated her differently, never spoke to her with pity, and always spoke with pride when discussing her abilities. Their belief in her reinforced the belief she already held in herself. They also reminded her to be patient, to know that people would eventually recognize her talent, even if it took time. Outside of school, the world was a mix of wonder and challenge. The girl loved exploring sounds, feeling textures, and discovering patterns that others might overlook. She would walk with her family through parks and busy streets, listening carefully to the life around her. These experiences became inspiration for her music. She could translate the rhythm of the city, the laughter of children, the rustling of leaves, and the chirping of birds into melodies on the piano. Each piece she played became richer, more complex, and more alive. Some people continued to doubt her, though. They assumed she relied solely on memory, that she could not truly interpret the emotions in the music. They questioned her ability to handle complex performances or to participate in competitions. The girl sometimes overheard their skepticism, but she used it as fuel rather than discouragement. Every day she practiced with more focus, more dedication, and a quiet determination that no one could see, but everyone could feel when she played. Her friends were a source of comfort and joy. A small circle of classmates and neighbors supported her, often coming to listen as she practiced or performed. They did not care about her blindness. They cared about her music, her heart, and her courage. They cheered when she mastered a difficult piece and offered comfort when she struggled. Their companionship reminded her that while some people might doubt her, there were others who saw her true talent and believed in her fully. The girl also began to understand the power of patience and persistence. Some pieces would take days or weeks to perfect. She learned to embrace the slow progress, to celebrate small victories, and to remain calm in the face of difficulty. Each challenge became a lesson, teaching her not only about music, but also about life. She realized that determination and patience were as important as skill and talent, and that her ability to persevere would one day make her music unforgettable. Community events became opportunities for her to show her skills, though they were often intimidating. The audience might include strangers, some curious, some doubtful, some openly mocking. She felt their eyes on her, some filled with skepticism, some with surprise at seeing her perform. She had to learn to focus not on their judgment, but on the music itself. She developed an inner calm, a way of centering herself so that every note reflected her heart, not their expectations. Over time, the girl began to notice small changes in people's reactions. When she played simple melodies, some listeners would sit quietly, listening with more attention than before. Teachers and peers who once doubted her began to watch with curiosity, then admiration. It was a slow shift. But it encouraged her to keep going, to keep practicing, and to continue believing in herself even when the world had not yet caught up. She also found inspiration in the lives of other musicians. She read stories of people who had faced difficulties but had achieved greatness through persistence and love for their craft. These stories motivated her, showing her that talent, combined with effort and resilience, could overcome barriers. She applied these lessons to her own life. imagining a future where she could play not just for herself, but for audiences who might one day understand the depth of her gift. Despite the challenges, the girl never lost her joy for music. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a friend, a companion, and a teacher. She spent hours experimenting with new melodies, creating small compositions, and exploring different styles. Each practice session became an adventure, a journey into sound and emotion. She discovered new ways to express herself, to tell stories without words, to communicate with anyone who would listen. Her growth did not go unnoticed. Her teacher praised her for her creativity, resilience, and emotional expression. Friends and family admired her courage and dedication. Even some peers who had doubted her talent began to show respect. She was no longer just the blind girl struggling with music. She was a young artist, developing her own voice, and capable of touching hearts through her performances. The girl's understanding of music deepened with each passing day. She learned to listen not just to the notes she played, but to the spaces between them. She explored dynamics, tempo, and expression, discovering that the silence between notes could be just as powerful as the sounds themselves. Her music became richer, more nuanced, more capable of evoking emotions in listeners. She also learned the importance of humility and patience. She knew that there would always be challenges ahead, and that not everyone would understand or appreciate her talent. But she trusted the journey, understanding that persistence, dedication, and passion would eventually shine through. She did not need immediate validation. The music itself was reward enough. Each night, after practice, she would sit quietly, reflecting on the day's accomplishments and challenges. She thought about the people who doubted her, the lessons she had learned, and the music she had created. She felt a quiet pride in her growth, knowing that her talent was real and that her efforts were making a difference, even if only she could fully appreciate it. Through these experiences, the girl developed a deep sense of empathy and understanding. She knew what it was like to face doubt, skepticism, and judgment, and she learned to treat others with kindness and patience. Her music carried not just technical skill, but the wisdom of someone who had learned to overcome challenges and embrace her true self. In time, the girl's confidence grew. She began to imagine larger stages, audiences beyond her neighborhood, and opportunities to share her music with more people. Though the road ahead was uncertain, she believed in her abilities, trusted her instincts, and knew that her dedication and love for music would guide her forward. She was ready for whatever challenges might come, knowing that her heart and her piano were one. The day of the big performance finally arrived. The girl had prepared for weeks, practicing every note, every phrase, and imagining the music flowing effortlessly from her fingers. Her heart raced with excitement and nervousness. She had played in small gatherings and school events before, but this was different. This was a larger audience, strangers who had no personal connection to her, and some who might doubt her talent simply because she was blind. She could feel their curiosity, skepticism, and silent expectations pressing down on her even before she walked onto the stage. Her family accompanied her, quietly encouraging her with soft words and gentle touches. They knew how much this meant to her, and they believed in her more than anyone else. The girl took a deep breath, reminding herself of all the hours she had spent practicing alone, of all the lessons she had learned, and of the determination that had carried her this far. She walked to the piano with steady steps, her fingers brushing lightly over the polished keys as if greeting an old friend. The audience was restless at first. Some people whispered to each other, curious about what a blind girl could do. Others leaned forward, skeptical and expecting a mistake. Some faces showed doubt, some pity, and some genuine curiosity. She felt the weight of their eyes on her, but instead of fear, she felt focus. She knew that the moment had come to show them who she truly was. Not through words, but through music. She positioned her hands on the keys, feeling their familiar shapes, the smoothness of the surface, and the slight ridges that marked each note. She closed her eyes, not out of nervousness, but to help her concentrate. The audience's whispers faded in her mind, replaced by the quiet anticipation that lived inside her own heartbeat. She remembered her teacher's advice. Music was more than notes. It was emotion, story, and life itself. She let that guide her. The first note she played rang clear and strong. It was followed by another, then another, each one flowing naturally into the next. The audience went silent, their skepticism momentarily paused as they listened. The sound was not just music. It was a statement, a declaration of ability, courage, and artistry. Her fingers moved with precision, guided by memory, intuition, and emotion, creating melodies that seemed to speak directly to the hearts of everyone in the room. As the piece continued, the girl became fully immersed in the music. She did not think about the audience, their doubts, or their expectations. She thought only about the piano, the sounds she was creating, and the emotions she wanted to convey. Each note carried a story, each phrase painted a picture, and each pause added depth to the experience. The room, once filled with whispering and curiosity, became still. People leaned forward, captivated by the performance. She noticed subtle reactions from the audience. Eyes widened in surprise at her skill. Some faces softened in awe, and others held a quiet respect. She could feel the energy in the room changing, shifting from doubt to admiration. Her music was breaking through the walls that skepticism had built, reaching the hearts of those who had underestimated her. It was a powerful feeling, one that gave her even more strength to continue playing with emotion and grace. The piece reached a more challenging section, filled with rapid notes, intricate rhythms, and emotional crescendos. Her fingers danced across the keys with confidence, each movement precise yet fluid. The audience gasped softly, realizing that this was no ordinary performance. The complexity and emotion of the music revealed a depth of talent they had not expected. The girl felt a quiet smile within her heart, knowing that all her practice, patience, and determination were paying off in this very moment. She played with passion, letting the music tell the story she had carried in her heart for years. It was a story of struggle and perseverance, of quiet determination in the face of doubt, and of the power of belief in oneself. Every note, every chord, and every pause carried meaning, and the audience could feel it. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others held their breath, not wanting to miss a single sound. The room was completely absorbed, the earlier whispers replaced by complete silence and attention. The girl felt a sense of freedom as she continued. She had practiced for this, dreamed of this, and now lived it. The audience's doubts no longer mattered. She was communicating through her music, reaching people in ways words never could. She remembered her teacher's words about emotion and story, and she let that guide her, allowing her fingers to move instinctively, creating a performance that was both technical and deeply emotional. As the music reached its climax, the intensity and emotion in her playing grew. The notes became louder, the rhythms more dynamic, and the melodies more expressive. The audience could feel the story unfolding. The journey of a young girl who had faced doubt, skepticism, and challenges, yet had risen above them. Each note resonated in the room, echoing the determination, courage, and heart of the pianist. Finally, the last notes lingered in the air, fading slowly into silence. The room remained quiet for a moment, as if no one wanted to disturb the spell that had been cast. Then, gradually, applause began to build. It started with a few hesitant claps, then grew louder, filling the room with admiration, respect, and awe. The girl smiled quietly, knowing that her music had spoken louder than any doubt. Louder than any expectation of failure. People approached her afterward, some with tears in their eyes, others with wide smiles of amazement. They spoke words of praise and encouragement, acknowledging her talent, dedication, and courage. Even those who had doubted her could not deny the power of what they had just witnessed. The blind girl had transformed skepticism into admiration, doubt into respect, and silence into awe. Her family hugged her tightly, pride shining in their eyes. They had always believed in her, and now the world could see her gift as well. The girl felt a quiet joy, not from the applause or recognition, but from the knowledge that she had shared her heart through her music. She had turned years of practice, determination, and resilience into a performance that left a lasting impression. The experience taught her an important lesson, that belief in oneself, combined with dedication and hard work, could overcome even the strongest doubts and obstacles. She realized that the journey was just as important as the performance, that every moment of practice, every struggle, and every small victory had prepared her for this moment. And she knew that she would carry this lesson forward, not just in music, but in every aspect of her life. The audience left with a new understanding of what it meant to overcome challenges. They had witnessed a blind girl pianist defy expectations and create something beautiful, moving, and unforgettable. They would remember the performance, not just for the music, but for the story it told, the courage it represented, and the power of belief it demonstrated as the girl left the stage. She felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. She had faced the moment everyone was waiting for, a moment filled with doubt and anticipation, and she had risen above it. Her music had spoken for her, conveying emotion, skill, and heart. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more skeptics and doubts, but she also knew that she had the strength, passion, and talent to face them all. That day marked a turning point in her life. It was not the end of her journey, but a beginning. She had discovered the true power of her music, the impact it could have on others, and the importance of believing in herself. From that day on, she played not just for herself, but for anyone who needed to see that determination, courage, and talent could overcome any obstacle. Her music became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the beauty that could come from facing life with heart and dedication. The applause after the performance was loud, but the girl barely heard it. She was still lost in the music, in the story she had told with her fingers and heart. For her, the performance was not about recognition or praise. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above doubt and fear. As she slowly stood up from the piano, she felt a quiet pride, a sense of achievement that no words could capture. The room had been transformed, and she could sense it in the energy around her. People in the audience were whispering to each other, some in disbelief, some in admiration. They could not stop talking about what they had just witnessed. Many were stunned that a blind girl had performed with such precision, emotion, and depth. They realized that their expectations of failure had been entirely wrong. The silence they had anticipated had turned into something far more powerful, respect and awe they did not expect. They were witnessing talent and determination overcoming any limitation. Her family rushed to her side, smiling and holding her hands tightly. Their pride was immense, but so was their relief. They had watched her work for years, seen her struggle and practice tirelessly, and now the world could see the result. Their eyes were shining with emotion, and they whispered words of encouragement and love. For them, this was more than a performance. It was proof of everything they had always believed about her. The girl felt a mix of emotions. She had always known she could play, but seeing the audience's reaction made her understand the impact her music could have. She realized that her talent was not just a personal gift. It could inspire, move, and touch the hearts of others. Every note she had played carried a story, and the people in the room had heard it, felt it, and understood it in their own way. It was a powerful, humbling, beautiful moment. Some audience members approached her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for sharing such a moving experience. They told her that they had doubted her, assumed she would struggle, and expected mistakes. Instead, they had witnessed grace, skill, and emotion unlike anything they had imagined. Her music had spoken louder than any words, proving that limitations exist only in the minds of those who expect them. She felt a quiet joy knowing that she had changed their perception. Even if just for a moment, her teacher also approached, smiling broadly, eyes filled with pride. They praised her technique, her emotion, and her courage. The teacher knew how much dedication had gone into this performance, how many hours of practice, frustration, and perseverance it had taken. They reminded her that this was just the beginning, that her music had the power to reach far beyond this room. The girl listened carefully, absorbing the words, but she felt that she had already learned the most important lesson herself, that belief in oneself could create miracles. The room gradually emptied, but the energy lingered. People spoke quietly about what they had experienced, sharing stories of how they had underestimated her or doubted her abilities. They realized that their expectations had been narrow, shaped by sight and assumptions, rather than understanding and skill. The girl had shown them that true talent does not need visibility to shine. It only needs passion, dedication, and heart. Backstage, the girl sat quietly for a moment, letting the adrenaline settle. She reflected on her journey, the long hours of practice, the mistakes, the encouragement from family and friends, and the small victories that had led her to this point. She realized that every struggle, every challenge, had prepared her for this moment. Her music had become a testament to her resilience, a reflection of her soul, and a bridge between her world and the world of others. As the days passed, the story of her performance spread. People who had been in the audience told their friends, neighbors, and colleagues about the blind girl who had played with such skill and emotion. The performance became a local legend, not because of spectacle, but because of the heart and dedication behind it. People began to approach her with respect, admiration, and curiosity about her music. She noticed a shift in the way others treated her, no longer with doubt or pity, but with genuine interest and support. The girl continued to practice diligently. She understood that one performance, no matter how successful, was just a part of her journey. She set new goals for herself, exploring more complex pieces, experimenting with different styles, and composing her own music. Her confidence had grown, but so had her desire to keep improving. She knew that true mastery required ongoing effort, patience, and love for the craft. Her friends and family remained by her side, encouraging her growth and celebrating her accomplishments. They continued to remind her of the importance of perseverance, humility, and kindness. While her talent had brought her recognition, they emphasized that it was her heart, its determination, and character that made her truly remarkable. She took these lessons to heart, understanding that music was not only about skill but also about the emotions and connections it could create. The girl also began to inspire others. Students at her school, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard of her performance looked up to her as a role model. They saw in her the proof that obstacles could be overcome, that dedication could lead to success, and that belief in oneself could triumph over doubt. Some young musicians sought her guidance, wanting to learn from her experience and her approach to music. She welcomed them, sharing her knowledge patiently and encouraging them to find their own voice. Through this experience, the girl learned the importance of resilience and perspective. She understood that people might doubt her abilities, but she did not have to internalize their skepticism. Instead, she focused on her own growth, her love for music, and the impact she could make. This mindset became a guiding principle not just for her performances, but for every aspect of her life. She realized that challenges were opportunities, doubts were lessons, and determination was a force stronger than any expectation of failure. Her teacher continued to support her development, introducing new techniques, complex compositions, and innovative ideas. Together, they explored the depths of musical expression, experimenting with harmony, rhythm, and emotion. The girl thrived under this guidance, pushing her boundaries and discovering new possibilities. She learned that mastery was a journey, one that required curiosity, discipline, and an open heart. The girl's confidence also allowed her to connect with her audience in new ways. She began to understand how her music could evoke emotions, tell stories, and create a shared experience. She noticed subtle reactions during performances, the way people leaned forward, closed their eyes, or smiled softly, and realized that music could communicate in ways words could not. This insight deepened her artistry, making her performances even more compelling and impactful. Over time, the girl began to participate in larger events, competitions, and recitals. Each new experience brought its own challenges and opportunities, and she faced them with courage and grace. The lessons she had learned from earlier skepticism and doubt stayed with her, reminding her that talent, passion, and perseverance were more powerful than any expectation of failure. She continued to grow as a musician, a storyteller, and a human being. Her journey also shaped her character. She became more empathetic, patient, and understanding of others' struggles. She knew what it felt like to face doubt and prejudice, and she treated people with kindness, encouragement, and respect. Her music carried not only skill and emotion, but also a sense of humanity, compassion, and connection. People were drawn to her not just for her talent, but for the way she touched lives through her artistry. As the girl reflected on the performance and the aftermath, she felt gratitude. Gratitude for her family, her teacher, her friends, and even the skeptics who had underestimated her. Each had played a role in shaping her journey, teaching her resilience, determination, and the value of believing in oneself. She knew that the path ahead would have more challenges. But she also knew that she had the strength, skill, and heart to face them. Music had given her a voice, a purpose, and a way to touch the world. Time passed, and the girl's life continued to revolve around music. She had grown not only in skill, but also in confidence and self-understanding. The performance that had once shocked an audience into silence had become a turning point, a reminder that talent, perseverance, and heart could overcome doubt. People now saw her as more than a blind girl. They saw a young musician capable of touching lives with her music. A storyteller whose voice was carried through her piano, she continued to practice daily, finding new ways to challenge herself and expand her abilities. She experimented with compositions, harmonies, and rhythms, exploring music from different cultures and styles. She discovered that each piece had a story to tell, and that her interpretation could bring out emotions that words could never capture. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge between her inner world and the hearts of others. Even as recognition grew, she remained humble. She remembered the years of doubt, the whispers of people who had underestimated her, and the long hours of practice alone in her room. She knew that her success was not simply about talent, but about determination, patience, and the courage to continue despite challenges. This humility became part of her identity, shaping the way she approached both music and life. The girl also began to inspire others in ways she had not anticipated. Young musicians sought her guidance, curious about her techniques and how she learned to play without sight. She shared her experiences openly, encouraging them to find their own voice and trust their own abilities. Her story became a symbol of hope, showing that obstacles could be overcome with dedication, passion, and belief in oneself. She taught them that failure was not the opposite of success, but a stepping stone toward it. Her family remained her foundation. They celebrated every accomplishment with joy and provided comfort during moments of frustration. Their unwavering support reminded her that love and encouragement could carry her through any challenge. They attended every recital, every practice, and every small gathering. Their presence a constant reminder that she was never alone in her journey. Through them, she learned the importance of community, support, and unconditional love. As she grew older, the girl performed in larger venues and at more prestigious events. Each performance brought new challenges, but she faced them with courage and focus. She had learned to block out doubt, to concentrate fully on the music, and to communicate through her art. Audiences reacted with admiration, respect, and emotion. And she understood that the power of music lay not only in skill, but in the connection it created between performer and listener. She also learned to adapt to new situations, performing on unfamiliar pianos, in new spaces, or for audiences with diverse expectations required flexibility and intuition. She relied on her sense of touch, memory, and hearing, but also on her ability to remain calm and focused under pressure. Each successful performance reinforced her belief that limitations were often only as real as the fear of them. She had proven time and again that determination and heart could overcome any obstacle. Her music continued to evolve. She composed pieces inspired by her experiences, her emotions, and the world around her. These compositions were personal, yet universal, capable of touching the hearts of anyone who listened. She experimented with tempo, dynamics, and expression, creating music that was both technically impressive and emotionally powerful. Every note was infused with her story, her courage, and her dedication. The girl's influence extended beyond her performances. People who had once doubted her abilities began to advocate for her and celebrate her talent. They shared her story with others, helping to challenge stereotypes and assumptions about disability and ability. Her music became a source of inspiration, reminding people that limitations exist only when we allow them to, and that passion, practice, and perseverance can create remarkable achievements. She also embraced teaching, sharing her knowledge and experience with those who wanted to learn. She encouraged students to listen carefully, to trust their instincts, and to explore the emotional depth of music. She emphasized the importance of patience, practice, and self-belief, helping them understand that mastery is a journey, not a destination. Her guidance was rooted in empathy, experience, and the understanding that every musician faces their own obstacles. Through all of this, the girl remained focused on her own growth and expression. She never sought fame for its own sake, but she welcomed opportunities to share her music with larger audiences. She understood that the true reward lay not in applause or recognition, but in the ability to touch hearts and inspire others. Every performance, every composition, and every interaction became a chance to share her passion and her story. Her journey also shaped her perspective on life. She learned to face challenges with courage, to approach setbacks with resilience, and to find joy in the process of growth. She discovered that empathy, kindness, and patience were as important as skill and talent. She understood that people's expectations often reflected their own limitations, and that staying true to oneself was the key to overcoming doubt and achieving success. As she reflected on her journey, the girl realized that her music had become more than a personal passion. It had become a tool for connection, education, and inspiration. She understood the responsibility that came with talent, the ability to influence, encourage, and uplift others. Her experiences had taught her that true success was measured not by accolades, but by the lives touched. The hearts moved and the courage inspired. The girl continued to perform, compose, and teach, her life filled with music, purpose, and meaning. She approached each day with curiosity, dedication, and joy, embracing the challenges and opportunities that came her way. Her music remained a reflection of her heart, a testament to her resilience, and a gift to everyone who had the privilege of hearing it. In the end, she proved that blindness was not a limitation, but a unique perspective that enriched her artistry. She showed the world that talent, determination, and passion could overcome any obstacle. Her story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that the power to achieve greatness lies within, waiting to be nurtured, believed in, and shared. Through her music, she left a lasting legacy of courage, inspiration, and the beauty of a heart devoted to its passion.